Watch carefully as Kling AI turns these mushrooms into birds. But keep watching because the birds are soon going to turn into lizards. And these lizards will grow purple scales. But keep watching because soon wings will sprout as these little creatures begin to prepare for flight. What are you doing to prepare for flight?
Welcome back to the channel where we discuss the creative uses of AI. Now, if you have been watching the AI video space for any amount of time, you're probably familiar with Kling. And we've done at least one video on this incredible text and image to video service. It appeared on the scene shortly after we heard about Sora, which we're still sort of waiting to see what happens with that thing. And today I'm going to do something of a deep dive into this platform. I literally spent all weekend generating videos to really understand how to achieve the results I'm looking for in Kling. I think a lot of people get into these services and they start typing prompts or they upload pictures with no real strategy or direction just to see what'll happen. And that's totally fine. I love doing that. But if you're going to do a real project, you need to understand how things work so that you can get the specific result. So in addition to the piece that I showed you at the very beginning of this video and the technique I used to create that, I'm going to show you a lot of different things I played with over the weekend and show you exactly how I did it and what I learned. And I really hope this is helpful for you. If you're not familiar with Kling, let me just give you the briefest of overviews. In addition to creating videos, Kling is also an image generator. And let me tell you something, this is a quality image generator. We've been hearing a lot about Flux lately, a new AI image model that I've also covered on this channel on multiple occasions. But Kling is using the colors model, which is an excellent model, which a lot of people compare to Flux. You can just see by looking at some of these that I've generated for this project and other things that the quality is really, really excellent. The resolution is fantastic. The colors are great. It adheres to the prompt very well. It gives you exactly what I'm looking for. And of course, this tool is tied into the video tool so that if you wanted to bring any of your generations to life pretty quickly, you could simply say, bring to life. It'll bring it into the video editor and you can start animating it right away by either typing a prompt to give it guidance or just letting the AI do its thing. And one other tip I want to give you, just in case you overlooked it like many of us do who think we know everything. Each of these tools, the image generator and the video generator, come with a best practices document. Basically, it's the documentation for this. And instead of guessing how to get the results you want, if you come to this document and just look through it, you'll probably find examples of exactly what you want and the instructions on how to do it. It gives you the proper setup for a prompt that will give you the best results. The who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how of it all. If you skip any of those, you're not giving the model the best opportunity to do what it does best. And I've skipped those things lots of times. This particular document is about the image generator, and you will get such better results with this. And take note that the colors model is also pretty good at text. So if you want to include text in your video projects here, go ahead and give it a try. You stand a pretty good chance of getting it done. We have the same kind of document in the video section, and you really want to go through this because it will save you a lot of time and trial and error and spending all your credits trying to get the result, where if you just take a few minutes to read this guide, you'll know exactly what to do to get the types of shots you want. Camera angles, how to blend, the transitions, the whole thing, it's all here. So don't skip this part because you're going to spend a lot of credits trying to get the result you want. How do I know that? Because I freaking did all weekend long. Now, the beginning of this video featured a man holding mushrooms, which turned into birds, which turned into lizards, then dragons, and then flew away. That kind of effect of bringing this inanimate thing, like mushrooms or potatoes, which I'm about to show you, was what really drove my interest in trying to push Kling to the limits, because I love that effect and I wanted to see if I could do it too. But I learned a lot of lessons on how to do this a lot quicker, and as I said, I spent a lot of credits unnecessarily simply because I didn't use my brain and read through some of the documentation. I started this whole project with this image of these oranges, which I wanted to have turn into birds. But when I typed the prompt, oranges transform into orange birds that jump out of the basket and similar things, I would get things like this. We get the birds and we get the oranges, but it's not that effect. This one little orange here acted like it was going to do something. I tried changing the prompt to be more specific. Oranges in basket transform into orange baby ducklings that try to jump out of the basket. So we just still kind of get them appearing out of nowhere. It's a cute image, but it's not exactly what I was going for. Some of them do it a little little bit, but that's not what I wanted. So I thought, all right, I'll move on. I won't get the birds. Let's do some potatoes, because I'd seen some videos of potatoes coming to life. So my first attempt was using this prompt, numerous puppies crawling out of a box. Now, I was getting pretty excited because I do see some puppy action right here. These potatoes are definitely turning into puppies. I thought, okay, here we go. So I used the extend feature in Kling to just add to it. I used the customized extend so that I could tell it what to do. If you want to see the history of the prompts that you've used as you've extended this, you can just hover over extension history. I used the same one, numerous puppies crawling out of a box, and now in the second part of that video, you're getting more details of the puppies' faces. So again, getting very excited because yes, it's happening. So now I add another 4 seconds to it, and I get a little bit more specific with the prompt, numerous puppies crawling out of a box and running away. I wanted to see if I could get them to jump out and do some moving around. At some point, the subtitles started to appear, but again, you can see it's happening. They are turning into puppies, so I called this a success, even though since then I've learned a lot better way to do this, and that's what we're going to be covering later. So as I add another 4 seconds, I added to the extension history, but I kept the same thing. I wanted them to get out of that box and freaking run away, but I just couldn't get them to do exactly what I wanted to do as quickly as I wanted them to do it. But I do have puppies into potatoes, and that makes me very happy, and they're super cute. So as I kept adding on to this animation, I said puppies morph into kittens. So at the end of this video, the puppies should begin to start to turn into kittens. And they do. Right here you can see like some pointy ears and the tails. As I do still another extension, I say kittens crawling out of box chasing bugs. I thought maybe if I give these animals some motivation, something that would appear on the ground and tell them, no, I want you out of the box. Now granted, the animals look a little mushy as they morph, but you can see at the end they are definitely turning into cats now. Finally, in the last generation of this, I said specifically orange tabby kittens crawling out of a box chasing bugs. Now if we just skip to the end of this video here, you'll see that the cats do start to turn into orange tabby cats. That might be a bug back there that it's trying to chase, but in general it took me several tries, 32 seconds to get the full transformation that I wanted, but still pretty cool even though there is a quicker way, which we will get to. If you're a filmmaker and you want to tell stories, you want the flexibility of having longer clips. You don't want to just go in 4-second increments, and that's why we have the extend feature and of course the ability to be very specific with the start and end frames of the videos that we want to create. That gives us really the ultimate control, and really that was the secret to getting what I wanted in all of these morphing videos too. I generated some pictures of a cat because I had this idea of getting a cat to stand up and walk over here and walk over there, and I wanted one long continuous shot. I wanted to see how I could use keyframes to achieve that result the best way possible. I had this as the start frame and this as the end frame, and I got this, except we have a very weird arm thing. I didn't give it any text prompt, I just decided to let the AI do its thing. So on the second attempt, I used a different picture. That's a little bit better. We have the movement without some weird hand growing out of his face, but it does sort of appear under his chin. The fire animation's good, but it's still not exactly that cinematic, realistic look I was looking for. But here's the thing you really need to get about AI video. It's going to take multiple generations, most of the time, to get what you want. And sometimes you may think you're never going to get it. And as I learned, it requires a lot of playing with the start and end images. You may think that your two choices represent a natural movement selection that certainly the AI is going to know what to do. It's not always the case, but sometimes it works very well. One of the most annoying things that happens when you use keyframes with the beginning frame and the end frame is when the camera cuts. Like, I simply want this image to move into this image. And the movement at the beginning of the video is great, but then it pops right into this image. And sometimes it just takes text prompting, sometimes it just takes multiple iterations, sometimes it involves moving the creativity slider back and forth to get the result you want. Just be prepared to do it multiple times. I really think there's an unrealistic expectation that people put on all of these tools. Everybody wants everything to do everything. This is another part of the sequence I was trying to create with the cat when I gave up on trying to make it one continuous movement, because in reality films aren't always one continuous movement. I just wanted to see if I could get it to work, but if you don't, then you have to be creative and think outside the box and say, how else can I tell this story? So in this case I thought, well, I'll just then cut to the cat walking through the kitchen. So here's just a few seconds of the cat walking. There's no end frame here, so there's nothing for the camera to suddenly switch to. It's just a nice natural clip of the cat meandering through the kitchen. I thought I'd take the same approach here. Rather than giving it an end frame, I thought I'd just tell it the cat jumps off the stool and licks its tail. So we get him to begin to jump off, but he actually just wanders around and considers jumping off the stool. and we don't really get to the tail licking either. But if we just use this section of the clip, not where he's hovering in the air, then you've got some good B-roll of a cat on a stool. Again, if we just let go of our expectations that the tool has to do exactly what we say every single time and think more like a traditional film director who creates lots of different shots, lots of different takes, and then takes the best ones and puts them together in a story. No director expects their actors to do everything right the first time or any particular thing to happen just exactly how they want it the first time. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. That's filmmaking. Here's another attempt with the same image, except this time he really hovers there for a long time, defying all kinds of gravity, but now he goes down on the floor. So I could cut out all this part and just use this part where he walks onto the floor. Here's another example where I was kind of hoping that there would be an interesting morph between this first image and the second image rather than this fade that we get. And there's not really a ton of animation going on over here, but when I ran it again and said the man morphs as he plays the guitar enthusiastically, look at that. We get not only the morph, but a lot more action and fun in the image. This is an example where the text prompt really helped. Some of these bring your portraits to life results can be extremely scary. I used this old picture from a million years ago, wind gust blows hair as man tells a joke, and oh my God, that's just freaking horrifying. Here I was hoping to do sort of a time warp, but the images were just too different and it was pretty much an unrealistic expectation for me to think that this was going to somehow morph. I did a camera pan from one man to the other, hoping that maybe it would just go, here he is over here, and then we'll move over. And you can see the camera pan, but it wasn't exactly what I was going for. Here's a great example of being able to add elements to the image that weren't even there just with the text prompt. So here was the still image, so that you'll notice there's no snow in the sky and there's no phone in her hand. However, camera dolly woman looks at phone as it begins to snow. She looks at her phone, which wasn't in the picture, and it begins to snow, and we get this nice little camera dolly, just like I said. Same idea here. Superhero woman playing violin as birds land on the sidewalk in front of her. There were no birds before. By the way, as an aside, this is an example of where I would use a face swap solution somewhere at this point to put a face over this that was more consistent. But in terms of creating the base animation, it's great. In this case, I used two images, a start and a stop, and this time I was pretty certain I'd get the result I was looking for because the images weren't that different, and I'm thrilled with this one. Now you'll notice that I did have the creativity slider down a little bit. I was in the professional mode for this 5-second clip rather than a 10-second clip. All of this requires experimentation. There is no one size fits all. This is going to work for you every single time, so let's just be realistic as we go through these types of tools. This was just a single image, woman playing violin as people throw cash at her. And the cash and the people were created from nothing, just the prompt. Here's an example of where I did want one long tracking shot, or longer than just 4 or 5, 10 seconds. So I originally created the initial 10-second clip with the prompt, a muscular man writhing in agony, basically a man transforming into a werewolf. Had it in the professional mode for 10 seconds. I got this generation right out of the gate, which I think is pretty good. So now I wanted to extend it to just keep the action going. The extension I added was werewolf stands on its feet, looks around, and roars angrily. Again, I wanted this creature to stand up, and I just wasn't getting it with these prompts. What I've learned, of course, is if I had just created an image of the werewolf standing up and used that as an end frame, it probably would have worked a lot better, rather than trying to force the movement. But let's keep going. To the extension I added, suddenly runs down the dark path in search of prey. So again, I thought, give it a specific action and maybe then it will move and we can get it to go down the trail. It does give us movement, and it looks like it's starting to stand up here to maybe take off and run, but we run out of time. That's the end of that clip. Finally added one last extension, which is basically the first extension again with a focus on running and not just the transforming. You can see here in the last 4 seconds, we aren't getting the running, but he's now standing up. So this is where it clicked, you know, Bob, just switch camera angles. If you want this guy running, let's just start a whole new video. So that's what I did. I used that last prompt that I created about running rather than transforming and created a new clip, just a text to video clip with no guiding image, and let it go for 10 seconds. And now we have him. You can kind of tell he's in mid-transformation. His face is looking sort of wolfy. In my mind, I was picturing fur coming out and that whole thing, so I extended it. Didn't change the prompt, just said, no, I really want this to happen. Now we see a little bit more fur just barely going onto his face. It's very subtle, and it gets very dark there, so it's hard to tell whether or not he's actually turning into the wolf. But if I was to create another scene where he's fully wolfed and running, it would make sense, because it could be happening right here. I have this image that's sort of in a comic book format of an alien xenomorph enjoying espresso in various outdoor locations, and I thought, wonder what would happen to each individual frame if I asked it to animate this image. And I got what I was hoping for. Each individual frame tells its own story, although they do sort of morph and do some strange things here. The general principle was I wanted different action in every frame, and I basically got it. As I continued my attempts to get pictures that morphed into each other rather than doing a camera switch, I had these two images, the before and the after, if you will, and I thought it did a nice job. This is really more of the type of thing I wish it would do every single time. Give us some nice action between the two to bring them together rather than a cut. So I thought that was pretty interesting and did a nice job. I would run this through a face swap, put the original one in again, and clean that all up if I was going to use this for something. This is another one that was done only from a text prompt, no guiding image. And the story behind this one is I asked ChatGPT to go find the top AI news story of the day and then write a satirical cartoon about it. And in this case, it was about the rising cost of AI technology. It created the description of the cartoon, which I plugged in here, and now I have this. And it has basically a group of well-dressed executives with exaggerated smug expressions, which sort of gives it the caricature look. You know, that's what exaggerated expression does. I love what it's doing up here on this little monitor. And I extended it with the prompt, a glass jar of tomatoes suddenly drops from the ceiling, shattering as it hits the table and throwing tomatoes all over everyone. And that's going to happen right about here, except that the glass jar didn't fall down. It just started falling out of the machine, and we didn't really get to hitting everyone. But I still thought it was quite amusing, and I love the looks of these people. So I love this image, and I wanted to see what it would do. I brought it into Kling, and so I gave it the prompt, mechanical fly moves its head quickly back and forth, turns around, and flies away. So we've got it moving around. The detail is amazing, and it does at least start to fly away. Fly away. This one I did in the professional mode and gave it 10 seconds. So now we have the movement, a little bit of morphing here with the legs. It's not great. But then we zoom back, and now he flies off. Here's another single image. Mechanical dragonfly crawls around leaf as the camera on his back spins to survey the area. This image was created by my friend Bob in response to my posting my mechanical fly, and I thought, well, I got to see that sucker move. And again, you really see where Kling shines with the detail. This is playing back full screen. There's no upscaling that happens. This is just right out of the gate. This animation. Really nice. One of my other earlier ideas of telling a story with this technology over time was to start with something like cells dividing and then have that turn into fish and then salamanders, lizards, alligators, dinosaurs, you know, the whole evolution story. I started in the image generator and created these and decided which one I wanted to start with, and then used one of the other ones for the end frame, and then used the prompt single cell organisms preparing to divide. Just did a 5-second clip on the standard mode to make it quick. And we got this nice little spinning around the cell. So then I extended it and said cells begin multiplying rapidly, dividing quickly as the camera zooms out. Now what I was hoping for was for the cells to divide, but I forgot to delete the end frame, which clearly doesn't show any dividing going on, so I kind of asked it to do something impossible. And I just kept doing that. I put the extension morph into a prehistoric fish. But then I kept telling it, but this is the frame you got to end on, which isn't a prehistoric fish. So that was on me. Still not learning my lesson. Morphs into schools of colorful fish. Come on, I'm telling it. But yet, I keep telling it, it's got to end on that frame. What am I expecting? Finally, it occurred to me, wait a minute, if you want to morph it into colorful fish, why don't you create an image of fish? So I came into the image editor and I said, hey, help on making me some multicolored fish. And you'll notice that I used one of the cell images as a reference so that the color palette and everything would be the same and it would have the same general structure. See, now I'm using my brain. And that's what allowed this to happen. Now we're getting things the way I want to. There's cells, they divide and they turn into fish. But then I say fish thrash around until they become bright blue salamanders, but again, I've still got this in-frame thing. I just didn't learn that lesson until too late. So here I just thought I'd just create some basic footage of salamanders to make in my little evolution film. So I just had a still image that I created in the image generator, salamanders crawling out of a creek onto dry land, just a nice general salamander animation. Here's another salamander animation using a start and an end frame. The camera's zoom happened pretty quick, but it was more of a morph, but it just sort of happened so fast you don't really understand what's happening. Here again, I was hoping that the fish would morph into the salamanders, but the lesson learned here is, again, I'm only giving it 5 seconds to do it, and the change is too extreme. So then I thought, wait, let's make this easier on it. So we're going to go back to the image generator, use one of the fish images as a reference, and then say a group of brightly colored salamanders crawling to shore. Now I've got something that is a better blend between the fish and the salamanders. So then I thought, that's going to do it. Swimming fish transform into colorful salamanders crawling to shore. Put it in standard mode, 5 seconds, and what do I get? I get a freaking fade. But do you know what I did? I ran it again, but this time I took away the prompt. And now I've got my fish and they just walk right up onto land as salamanders. Yes! So then I thought I'll extend this, but I'll just do auto extend and see what the AI comes with in terms of an extension. And what happens is when the fish crawl up onto shore and become salamanders, all the momentum's lost. It sort of stops for a second and then they're slowly on the shore. And I have not yet figured out how to change that situation. I have tried it a few times. I'm getting great results with the fish moving up onto the shore, but once they're on shore as salamanders, it sort of stops the camera and then they do other movement, which again is fine, except it's just not what I was hoping for. And on that one, it did a full-on camera cut. This picture gave me great results in several scenarios, so let me show you. First of all, the prompt was friends at an outdoor market. So it's just nice and casual. She's sitting there. He's got the paper. Here, let's check this out, or we'll go down here. Why? There's a camera on me. Why? Okay, I'll look, whatever. It's just got a nice, friendly vibe. The difference on this one is I used the same prompt that created the image. So instead of just friends at a marketplace, I did this entire long prompt that created the image in the first place to see how it would change the animation. So it's definitely different. Has a different tone. Things look a lot more serious for some reason. Still nice, very realistic. Took this still image, gave it the prompt, frog just talks and talks while spilling her tea all over. And she starts with just a little bit of talking, and then she basically sits back and kind of listens more than talking. And the tea doesn't really spill all over, but it's such a charming little animation anyway. If I had created a second frame of the tea spilled all over her lap, then that probably would have solved that. Took this abstract image of a birthday cake, told it abstract cake with frosting dripping smoothly down on the sides, and this was pretty much exactly what I was hoping for. And this image, with the prompt cosmic cake with neon lights, glowing colors as Hello Kitty waves, turned into this delightful little animation. Let's get into how I did the animation at the very beginning. The first thing I want to tell you before anybody asks is about the lip syncing. I used another tool called Live Portrait, which I've talked about on this channel, to create the lip movement in the facial animation. And this just goes back to the point I was making before about how in any type of filmmaking, it's rare that any filmmaker is going to use one tool and expect it to do everything. Different tools for different jobs. Now in AI, we're really lucky that a lot of these people have combined a lot of tools together where you can get animation and lip sync and image generation all in one tool, but not all tools do it. But that doesn't mean that the tool loses all value. For example, Kling creates some amazing stuff, but it doesn't do the lip sync the way that I want to right now. But I can still use Kling to create the source material, which is what I did, and then use another tool to finish it off. This is very common and not a reason to get upset because, hey, this doesn't do lip sync. Why'd you do that? Because I'm making a film, and I use filmmaking tools to do it. The idea was a man's going to be carrying mushrooms, which turn into birds, which turn into lizards, and then dragons, and then fly away. So I had already learned my lesson with a text prompt. I'm not going to try to text prompt my way through this. I'm going to create a series of logical images, which are all very similar, and then it should have no problem doing what I ask it to do. And as you saw, it worked. Now, I believe that the original image of the man holding mushrooms was created in another program, which I brought in here and used as a reference image to create man holding baby birds. So we have the original image over here, and I hold the reference strength a little above the middle because I really want most elements in the image to stay the same so that the animation will work, and it did a fantastic job. Same basic guy, same position, hands outstretched, and now I just choose which image of the birds I want to use. In this case, I used this one. So when I created the first video, I had the first image that I used to create the second image, and then the second image, which I created by using the first image. I said that in such a confusing way, but it did exactly what I asked it to do. The mushrooms turned into the birds beautifully. I did several takes of it to see which one I liked in terms of the transformation, but whatever video I choose, they all end on this frame, which means I can use this frame as the beginning of the next clip so that we can extend this in a logical way. I went back to the image generator to create the lizard version of these animals and used the image of the birds as the reference image. So again, same position, same color scheme and everything, and then created several choices, and then ultimately I chose this one as the end frame, linked them together in the animation, and so now I've got the birds turning into lizards as the man continues to walk down the path. Then I just repeated the process for the lizards into the dragons, created dragons based on the reference image of the lizards, chose the one I wanted, brought it in, linked them together, Continued the same process, created versions of the image with the dragons with wings. So now we've got the dragons sprouting wings. And then finally, I created an image of the dragons flying away and linked that to the previous animation, get them flying off, and then one last one as they fly up even further into the air. Then you just drag each of the clips into the timeline in order, add your music and sound effects, and you've got your video. So what I'd love for your takeaways to be from this is read the guides for both the image generation and the video generation, be ready and willing to do multiple generations, and try to think strategically about when you're going to extend with text prompts and when you need to extend with images. If this is the kind of stuff you'd like to learn more about, well, why not subscribe to this very channel? Costs you basically nothing. And these are the types of topics we cover all the time.
If you subscribe now, I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you do not, I will look for you. I will find you. And I